Hello, this is Sarah Marisha White, and this is my new podcast, Our Bodies Will Be Dirt. Tune in to the mind of an artist, land steward, healing practitioner, and warrior for liberation as we talk about life, death, and the liberation of our bodies in between. Make a cup of tea, maybe make a little comfy space for yourself and come tap in with me. Hey, what's good, y'all? I'm back. And if you were kind of following along on my podcast to hear me talk about things I used to talk about, that's not going to happen right now. There's something changing in my life, and I'm still not at a place where I feel strong enough to truly walk in faith. I feel like I'm being challenged more than ever with hardship, with like addictive patterns, and with loneliness as I shift towards a path that is really hungry and curious about learning about Jesus. That's not what I thought went together, right? In my head, I thought if I was righteous, living this righteous path, which I'm not yet. I mean, I'm righteous, by existing. We're born righteous, but also just born with sin. And yeah, I just thought if I started being more curious and tried to live for God, that, everything would be blessed. And there are a lot of blessings, but wow, I feel like I'm in the trenches deeper than I've ever been, because now a lot of my inner beliefs and just my day-to-day thoughts are being challenged. And I'll have moments where I feel so enlightened and so blessed and so full of just passion about rediscovering God. And then I'll have the lowest lows where I'm like, oh, I just keep messing up. Like messing up is my nature. Falling feels so natural for me. And then also the questions that come up around just like my past perceptions around what followers of Jesus are like. And so much resentment that I have around only a certain group of people being righteous enough to be children of God. And those same questions come up about, like, what about all these other people that are good and that I love and that are just doing their best to explore, what God is to them? Because we live in a day and age where God is offered up in so many ways. The worship of the sun, the moon, the birds, the skies, the stars, all the different creator stories, the wind. It's a little overwhelming. And I guess for me, I thought if I could get a direct, clear download from God himself, like Sarah, here I am, then I would feel confident. And it doesn't seem like that's the way it works. Maybe for some people, and if I have a preference, I would prefer to be a prophet that could speak forth truth that I know that was clearly revealed to me. That to me seems like the fanciest calling, and it sounds romantic to me. I would love to have a big job, right? To bring God the glory. But instead it feels like, man, I'm just out here struggling. Because again, I think I was talking about this on the last episode, but I had a certain set of plans of the direction I was going to go. And I've studied all of these different spiritual approaches to go that direction. And I can't even emphasize how surprised I am that I'm getting stuck up here on the Bible. And sometimes I wonder if it's the way I was raised since I was taught young that that's the way it's supposed to be, that's the way I should go, that's the best way to live a life. And then I left that. I wonder if that it's because it was fundamentally woven into my foundation of how I came into my existence here. You know, I was surrounded by people speaking in tongues, and I used to sing hallelujah from my stroller. I used to lay my hands on my dolls. I used to lay my hands on kids on the bus. So that's where sometimes my doubt, it leaves the little door open for doubt that comes in. And maybe that's why I'm having hard times, is because I'm having a hard time having faith. And I think, you know, everybody is having hard times in general. But for me right now, there's something like really sticky and stuck where I'm like, why am I in this loop? Like I'll get a little bit of money and then I'll be negative 500 again. Being negative $500 is not something that I've experienced actually ever. And now it's been like a common story the last few months. I'm like, what is going on? And yeah, part of it is that I'm feeling convicted about certain type of work. A lot of it is what I invested a lot of my money and life into. And part of that was around exploring pleasure for healing. And don't start getting all triggered. I think everyone should do what is good for them. But for me, I started to question if my whole faith was going to be wrapped up in how I felt, if something was pleasing for me. And I'm like, what pain am I trying to escape? And I'm not saying that you shouldn't have pleasure. I still want to feel pleasure in life. And I still do in a lot of ways, like the way I cook, the way I see the world. Like when I walk down the street right now, it's spring and the birds are chirping and I can smell all the fresh flower. I'm like, the ultimate pleasure, bliss. The fact that we have access to it is just so blissful. To me, sometimes pleasure is a mind state. And I am receptive to receive pleasure. But I feel like I'm stepping back a little bit from work around providing pleasure outside of context. And really just thinking about the intention for some of these things that we get to feel in this life. Anyways, so something that really sat with me, I had mentioned at the end of the podcast from last time, Jesus Freak, I think that was episode 6, I kind of just casually said, I'm not a saint. And that just it's like it echoed in my head. I'm like, why is that like bothering me? And I realized I don't actually know what saint means in just like followers of Jesus generally. I know like what the Orthodox and like Catholic Church use that word for, but I hadn't really heard it recently. I haven't been in a Bible space, and I was just listening to some sermon of some, young, vibrant preacher, I guess. And yeah, she kept saying something about us being saints. So I was like, oh, is saint a good thing? And I pushed it off for a couple of weeks, but then today I thought, let me look into this. And saint means holy one, set aside for a different purpose. Saint can also just be a follower of Christ. In Greek, hagios, consecrated to God's service. And the Orthodox Christianity, it's an achieved high level of sanctity. So it makes me think about how, let me see if I can say this right, because I don't know all the language. This isn't something that, a world that I've been dwelling in, right? But the way I'm looking at it is kind of how you look at capitalism and patriarchy, how, as people got higher up, they kind of could level out like who gets to be a saint, right? And it makes it less accessible and harder for, like someone on the street to get into the house if you have to have certain accolades to get in. And I think that's why right away I thought, I'm not a saint, like I'm not perfect. But that's not what the word means. And it says we all sin, we all suffer, basically. We've been set aside by God and his grace. It's just in my own words. And it kind of takes some of the pressure off. Like, you're already a saint if you're willing to explore believing. And I'm sure there's some rules and regulations that I haven't understood yet. But from what I understand, there's just some grace there for us in this world, in this time. And I don't know about you, but I could just use some. I feel like sometimes it just feels like I'm failing while doing things really good every day. I mean, I'm taking beautiful photographs and creating art and sometimes sustaining a family, making sure that we do eat every day, even if I'm struggling to come up with the right resources, and working on this land project. And there's a lot that I'm doing, but I still just feel like I'm not living up to my fullest potential. And I'm not necessarily on the narrow path of my purpose. My path was going so many different directions, like routes, like I'm looking, trying to find the right place. And now I feel this need to use my attention and intentions in a really specific matter. So then all the noise can drown out and I can be clear. And so thinking about the word saint and how easily I just dismiss that I could even have access to being clean again, right? And to feeling whole, it kind of clarified for me why all the different ways that, let me just say, darkness wants to keep us in darkness. And that comes in so many different forms. Like for me, it definitely comes in with shame, abandonment. It comes in with a feeling of lack of worth. Just like always this little voice like, man, you ain't good enough. You ain't done enough. You don't know enough. You're not great enough. You're not pretty enough. And that's not something that I think comes from my spirit. But I think it is something that spiritually holds me back, holds my tongue, and sometimes has me dim my light. And so if I have to get on here and talk about Jesus just to like free my own shackles, then that's what I'm going to do. And I don't know everything. I don't have all the answers, but little things are getting revealed to me that at least give me more questions. And so I did take the time to look up, what is this word saint? How did I use it? How did I perceive it? What does it really mean? And the other thing is, in Latin, it's like sanctus is the root word that saint comes from. And that's just basically like holy. And it makes me think about all of the creatures that you can hear in the springtime that are coming alive, all like reaching upwards, right? Like they are holding us. They keep dying and being rebirthed for us to live in this environment. And that itself to me is holy. And it makes that word feel a little bit lighter for me. And it gives me an opportunity to think about maybe what I was intended to deserve just as a birthright. And how many lies I hold close enough to me that they have power. It's very interesting. I've been really hesitant to like write praise music because I don't really feel like I want to talk about other stuff right now. This is what's on my heart. And just all the things coming up in my head and body about, number one, I wouldn't be able to do it good enough. And then also like what everybody would think. And maybe not wanting a part of my past self to die. I'm always clinging to life. That is a habit that I have. I like the opportunity, even when it's really, really hard, to not be dead. Sometimes I think it would be easier to not be here, but let me tell you, I avoid things that make it seem possible or probable that I might die. Immediately, at least. We all play around with our time, don't we? I think about how much time I've spent looking for things outside of my body to fulfill me. And so I do want to put a little more time into things inside of me that I can enrich and fine tune despite what anybody else thinks. And see what could come. Anyway, I'm going to pause and share this recording that I took from, what's her name? Hold on. This recording from Jackie Perry Hill. It just came up after I did my study about Saint. And I'd saved it a couple weeks ago, but I just thought, yeah, it went along with what I was thinking about today.
Finally, for example, you have Peter again, who Jesus told him, hey, when the rooster crows 3 times, you will deny me. What did he do? He denied him. And then when Jesus restored him over dinner, he says, hey, I pray for you that your faith would not fail. Somebody could be confused by that because they could say, Jesus, he denied you though, so his faith failed. But I would say his faith did not fail eternally. It failed momentarily. So even my momentary falls will not exclude me from being able to stand before God's presence. Beautiful. Faultless. Wow. He says that God is not only able to keep you from falling, but that God is going to present you without fault. So he's playing with contrast by saying God is not only able to keep you from falling, but God is able to keep you standing. Not only that, he's going to present you as if you've never done anything in your entire life. If you know anything about being without fault or without blemish, you know that that's connecting back to the Old Testament. One of the things God always demanded of his people in their sacrifice is that they could not have any blemish, because God wanted that which was presented to him to be representative of himself. God has no faults. God has no blemishes. He is perfect. He is spotless. He's so pretty. He is just a perfect God. But we know enough about ourselves that we know the moment we were born, we had faults. Why? Because we were all born in sin and shaped in iniquity. Half of us got faults right now in our mind that God himself is going to deal with. And so that's the predicament, is that if God is holy and we are not, How in the world will I be able to stand before him without being judged by him? But that's the beauty of Jesus, is that Jesus became the spotless lamb without blemish, who took on your blemishes so that you wouldn't have to stand before God and be judged. Jesus took on the burden and the wrath and the dirt and the nastiness so that when we stand before God, we stand purely on the righteousness of Jesus Christ alone. This is why Jude has the audacity to say that God will not only be able to keep you, but when you stand before him, you will stand as if you have never committed a sin in your entire life. That is the lavishness of grace that these people want to pervert.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so that's kind of stuff I'm listening to in my spare time. It's really shifted, and it's funny. It's funny. I feel pretty speechless, to be honest, just the feels that I have sharing it and saying it and really hoping to get more clarity on the road I'm supposed to be wandering. And that's without judging anyone else's road. You know, we all have to, in the end, answer to our own lives, no matter what you believe in. And if you believe in reincarnation, that's this, you know, you still got to come back and deal. And what I like about this recent exploration, even though I dislike some of the things that I've had to clear out of my life, clear out of my home. Real talk. Excuse me. Sorry, parents, if you're listening to this, but I invested a lot of money in like pleasure toys and sensation devices and things that I like to play around with or play with others with or just hoped to eventually. And I boxed all that stuff up. I'd say probably $2,000 worth of stuff. Threw away a lot of it too that I didn't think could be like recycled and shared. But to me, I'm like, dang, that's serious. Like, first I got all the crystals out the crib. Now all these toys that are so beautiful and I love them are out. And it just feels like kind of still kicking and screaming. Like I thought I'd do those things and then I would receive a blessing. You know, like I'm all behind in money and didn't even have groceries. And I'm like, where's my gigantic blessing? And yeah, nope. It's like there's more work to do. There's more letting go to do. But I believe that one week I will come here with a testimony because I'm doing the work. I'm committing. I'm giving it my all to see, you know, what is this path? And I've noticed, even though the blessings haven't been feeling palatable, I've noticed the way I approach people on the street is different. And I feel bad even saying it, but sometimes, you know, it's like there's somebody on the street, it's hot outside, and they're wearing like a lot of layers talking to themselves, and you just kind of want to like go on past. And my feeling and need to go on past is because in the past, I've gotten like attacked or like chased or followed or stalked by random people going up to people on the street. But I've at least tried to like be more mindful to see, is there something that I could offer? Even just having that question in my heart. And, you know, being in a rush, but letting another car go. Or stopping and letting some people walk across the street instead of just going by and having them wait. Just little choices. You know, maybe showing up with an open heart to someone that I felt harmed by before, but with boundaries. You know, the distance to keep myself safe and keep them safe. from my wrath, but also just seeing some humanity in all of us and knowing that if people can hear and see my inner thoughts and struggles, if they could see what I deal with alone, they might not want to talk to me either. They'd have pretty significant amounts of judgments. That's all of us, right? So that's one thing that I have noticed. Also, a lot more clarity on what I want to be around. I want to be around people that, even if I have different ideas or spiritual beliefs as them, that they want to see me win. Or that when I do have a win, they're standing up with me versus trying to belittle and push me down or take from me, leech. I want to be around people that are courageous and consistent. And I want to be that person for them. So if that means I have to take a little more time to be kind of quiet, working on myself, reading my little Bible, that's cool. Would I rather be doing something that feels more fun? Yes. Yes. Coming back around to pleasure, though, I noticed today, I feel like the word pleasure came up twice in the Bible. And I was like, ooh, hello. And I should have saved. Okay, I found one of them. I have this Bible that's side by side, Living Bible, King James Bible, which I really appreciate because I understand the King James is supposed to really have the closest specific understanding, but sometimes I'm like, what are you talking about? And I like to look over and see the other one. And the Living is just more understanding, I guess. But in Proverbs, they're talking about wisdom. And I love how wisdom is broken down like this feminine power. Wisdom crieth without, she uttereth her voice in the streets. That's the King James Version. But in the Living, wisdom shouts in the streets for a hearing. She calls out to the crowds along Main Street and to the judges in their courts and to everyone in all the land. You simpletons, she cries. How long will you go on being fools? How long will you scoff at the wisdom and fight the facts? Come here and listen to me. I'll pour out the spirit of wisdom upon you and make you wise. I've called you so often, but still you won't come. I've pleaded, but all in vain. For you have spurned my counsel and reproof. Someday you'll be in trouble and I'll laugh. Mock me, will you? I'll mock you. Anyway, that kind of triggered me because I'm like, there's always this big judgment, I just grew up feeling the judgment. So, and that's no, I'm not judging my parents about it, I think not all parents, my parents did the best they could with what they knew. And I just came out kind of rebellious and questioning things. Maybe I held it in for a long time, but I always had questions. So I do have a big question about this dooming judgment. But I will say that when I think of wisdom as something that could come in a feminine role, it kind of gives another voice to the voices in my head where I don't have to necessarily feel like everything's under judgment, but it's like, what can I learn here? Using discernment, having some type of discipline. Never really liked that word discipline, but using it for power, using it to really maintain and hear words that can be a guide for me. I have a lot of curiosity about that. But anyway, so wisdom, part of why I brought up wisdom with pleasure is because it's talking about wisdom gives. This is if you go further into Proverbs 4, 13, 14, 15, but this is the Living Bible's version of it. It says wisdom, or this is 16, 17. Wisdom gives a long, good life, riches, honor, pleasure, peace. Wisdom is a tree of life to those who eat her fruit. Happy is the man who keeps on eating it. I was like, yum. I've never really read anything like that in the Bible. I don't know. Maybe other people like already studied all this and it's just like elementary, but I just love how it keeps coming back to like the land. Like if we're watching the land, if we are stewarding the land, we get to really understand this relationship with creation and with there being instructions. You know, we plant the seeds, the fruit grows, it nourishes us back, and then nourishes the earth again. And the cycle, we just keep eating. And so even though I haven't felt like I've really like been feeling the Holy Spirit, I keep calling like, homie, if this is a thing that we can do, if you can change my internals by communicating to me and moving through me, let's go. I'll be like knocking, like, are you listening? I'm not feeling blessed right now, but I'm asking for the Holy Spirit. And I still, despite, just keep going on each day, trying my best, and spending little bits of time in the Word. And so today I was grateful that I found the word pleasure in there. And then one other thing I thought was really beautiful, and this is, you know, pertaining to a husband and a wife, you know, staying faithful together. And even me speaking on this is funny, right? I'm coming out of years of non-monogamy. I've never been married, and I'm really happy with my life, with my kids, and with, you know, I've got to love lovely people, but I do long for a certain type of devotion. And for me, that means I want the person that is going to be my person to have their own devotion, and for that to be elevated high on the list of priorities of what they do with their life, but also have devotion back to me. And I thought this was kind of hot. Let her breasts and tender embrace satisfy you. Let her love alone fill you with delight. I'm like, that's what I want, y'all. And I don't care. Everybody else can have whatever they want. But I thought it was cute to find that today. It just kind of helped me to feel like, well, maybe there's something to look forward to. Not only struggles and strife, right? Okay, well, I'm going to wrap this up. I appreciate you listening, and always feel free to hit me up if you have any thoughts, questions, if you want to go back and forth about anything. I am not a Bible scholar at all, and I don't even understand what I'm reading half the time. And so I have been just finding music, teachings, sermons, and reading the scriptures, and just taking one step at a time to try to get a better idea of what it looks like to live a life that's for God's glory. And it's crazy how much I've personally intertwined my success and my identity in my glory. So I've had to kind of take a step back, like, oh, you know, like, what does... I have this inner voice already just like fighting back, like, nah, it's for us, you know? But I wonder how I can bring the vibration of this dark world that we live in up towards glory and lighten the burden for even just one person. To me, that would be super sweet. Super sweet. Until then, if you pray for me, that my burden gets lighter. And all y'all have a beautiful, beautiful day, night, evening, rest, active space, wherever you are right now. And we'll talk again soon.